What questions is biology concerned with? What are the fundamental questions that biology is trying to answer?
Well, biology is a huge field, so I would say that different people will have different perspectives on what they think it's going to answer. I will give you my favorite kind of slant on this question. So I think that specifically developmental biology is kind of the most magical of all the sciences. And the reason I say that is because there you can see in front of your eyes how a quiescent oocyte, a little blob of chemicals, an egg, right, becomes, through the process of embryonic development, becomes a whole organism. In the case of the humans, it will be a human being with complex metacognitive abilities and all kinds of, a highly developed sense of self and intelligence and all of that. But all of us were once a little drop of chemicals. And it is that smooth, gradual developmental process that shows the emergence of mind out of physics and chemistry. And I can't think of a more profound problem than that. And I think that's to me, that's what the majority of biology is studying.
And why do you think we should study biology in the first place?
Well, if we want to understand ourselves, if we want to understand the world around us, we are an example of biology. Most of the things we're interested in are relevant to by either examples of biology or impinge on our nature as biological beings. Yeah, I think we have to understand that question of understanding what does it mean to be a mind, an embodied mind? What does it mean to be a mind in this universe with a physical body and the ability to interact with others through various interfaces? That's biology. What else is there? That's most of it.
So essentially, then, are we concerned about the question of mind and what is mind and how to better understand it? And biology is just one lens of looking at it?
I think that's a fair statement. I think that I mean there are many interesting questions, of course, but to me the question of what does it mean to be a mind in a physical universe is an extremely important and interesting question. And I think biology is a great lens. It's an essential lens. There are other lenses on that question. We can approach it through artificial intelligence. We can approach it through mathematics and various other things. But I think biology is a really essential lens on it.
Do you think it would be a worthwhile thing to investigate what we mean by the mind in the first place? Because you mentioned artificial intelligence, you mentioned mathematics, but these things are created through the human mind in the first place. So I think understanding what the mind is in the first place would be more fundamental as opposed to looking at it through artificial intelligence or mathematics, since these things emerge from the human mind or from human thinking or from thought in general. So could we explore what we mean by the mind in the first place?
We can, although I want to push back on this idea that these things emerge from the create that these things are a creation of the human mind. I don't actually believe that. I think that's I mean it might be true, and it's it's certainly a view that a lot of people have, but I don't hold to that. I think that there are fundamental aspects of reality with which different observers or different minds will see in different ways. And I don't believe we create the truths of mathematics. I think that artificial intelligence is just a way that we've developed to recognize and interact with aspects of intelligence that are unconventional intelligences that are all around us in various embodiments. That's actually typically pretty hard for us to recognize. But yeah, I don't think these things are inventions of the human mind.
Sorry, what I meant by that is, of course, like 2 + 2 = 4. That's in a way, a discovery as opposed to an invention when it comes to the question of is maths discovered or invention. So I get it from that perspective. And what I meant from the artificial perspective is that, we've created the computer. And then eventually we've reached a point where there's machine learning algorithms that can learn and AI and so on. That's what I meant by that. Or am I wrong about that?
I understand. Yeah, I understand. I mean, I think that when here's what I think we mean when we say we created a computer. There are events going on all around us. Some of these events are profitably interpreted as computations. So we have gotten to the point where we have a pretty good set of theories of how to interpret some of these events, including the events going on inside of a computer and some other things, that we can interpret these as the results of computations, and that's very useful. So I'm sort of shifting the focus on the observer and the interpretation of various events by an observer.
Right.
So somebody else can see the same events and interpret them in a different way that has nothing to do with computation. And in certain cases, they will have more utility, and in other cases, the computer view will have more utility. So I think the same, what we're discovering are interfaces to what I really think are a massive, maybe infinite pool of these kind of Platonic affordances that include various laws of number theory and other aspects of mathematics and the different, laws of computer science. What we discover are interfaces to these things, physical embodiments that let us take advantage of these things.
And why do you think we need to study that in the first place? Like, what's the ultimate goal, I guess, or why are we studying these things in the first place?
Well, I guess that's part of the broader question of why anybody studies anything, right? There are practical there are of course practical applications. So if you want to have more kind of an easier life and more free time, and deal with some of the vagaries of life, including disease and various birth defects and disorders. It's very helpful to have science and to understand engineering and to be able to address some of these things so that we could have a better embodied existence in life and reach our full potential, right? So these are practical applications. We're sort of born into this world having limited control over how we arrive here and what kind of embodiment, what kind of limitations. So having science and engineering is a nice way to sort of rise above those completely arbitrary limitations. That's kind of the practical side of things, but there are also kind of these fundamental aspects with a search for meaning. Why are we here, right? So what is the point of all the blood, sweat, and tears through a certain amount of life if we're not going to try to gain a better understanding of what's going on and how things work, and what we can do and maybe what we should do and things like that.
And this kind of goes back to a previous point that ultimately we're concerned about the human mind, right? Understanding the human mind.
Well, I'm not specifically concerned about the human mind. I'm concerned about mind in general. So
mind in general, of course.
The human mind is great, but I think it's just one sort of a cluster of points in this enormous space of possible kinds of minds. And I'm interested in all of them. I'm interested in diverse intelligence. I'm interested in different kinds of minds and how to recognize them, how to relate to them, and so on.
Mm-hmm. And when you mentioned human potential, what do you think the human potential is? Because to me, it seems like if we went around the globe, there's a lot of disorder. You could say we're destroying plants, we're destroying animals unnecessarily. There's war between us. And to me, it seems like it's necessary for us to somehow, I don't know, work together, cooperate between one another. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll preface this by saying that I'll give you my thoughts. I'm hardly an expert on what all of humanity should be doing. I have no idea what I don't have any way of knowing what anybody should be doing. So I'll just kind of give you my thoughts, but take everything with a grain of salt here. I think that there are two separate questions here. So one question is the real question of individual potentiality. So when you are born, how does one exercise one's cognitive and morphological freedom? So you're born in a particular body, which may be a healthy body for a particular species, or it may not be. And so you've got certain limitations of physical embodiment and of cognition that are there because of how you happen to be born. And so for those of us who are human and above, we may be able to say to look at different potentials and say, wouldn't it be nice if things were different, if I was in a different body, if I had a higher IQ, if I had a healthier body, if I had a longer lifespan, if I was able to do other things. So part of that human potentiality is just to see, can we expand the range of freedoms? Really, I consider this the the full meaning of the word freedom. It's not just, right, there's local freedom, which is being able to do all the things that are possible for me to do right now, but there's a kind of a second order freedom, which is, yeah, but maybe I can also alter myself and my surroundings and my future in a way that will enable me to do bigger and more interesting things. So I'm interested in that kind of second order freedom through technology, regenerative medicine, and so on. There's that issue, but then there's the issue of society, which is what happens when numerous individuals packed onto a single planet start all exercising their various freedoms. And we know what happens, right? We, from the most basic interaction between animals and then hominids and then modern technological humans. Obviously there's a lot of conflict. So it's kind of beyond my pay grade to say how to reduce conflict on a global scale. I have no idea, but I do believe that ultimately technology is really the only way past that, because ultimately the idea is to expand physical space and to expand expand resources to the point where there will be no point in competition. There will be nothing to compete for. So, just imagine, right, in some level of future, if you could have all the energy you needed from some, sort of cheap source, and you could expand off world, there really wouldn't be very much there wouldn't be, and of course, I'm sure it would still happen for various reasons, but I think there'd be a lot less conflict if we were to kind of remove those limitations.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just simply exploring here, but to me, it does seem that we do have the science, we do have the technology, we do have the scientific understanding to be able to, I don't know, perhaps provide the basic resources that we need for human survival, namely nutritional requirements, clothing requirements, and shelter for all of us. It seems to me that we do have the technology and the science to be able to do that, but our fundamental problem is that we can't seem to, I don't know, cooperate between one another and share this. And that's, to me, it seems like the need for power, the need for greed, the need for ambition, and so on. So to me, it seems like that would be like a more fundamental thing to concern about. But I don't know, I'm just simply exploring. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, the first part, I actually have no idea if we do or do not. Then there's the question of what are fundamental needs. So if it turned out that we could provide some level of living for everybody, the question would be is that, and if the requirement for that would be to cap, right? So this kind of like, okay, so in order to have a certain standard for everybody, nobody gets to go beyond a particular level. So I'm not a big fan of those kind of schemes. I think they turn out really badly in the end. But I actually don't. I have no idea what we can or can't provide. I do know that if we're going to be, realistic about these things, there's really what this always boils down to is some kind of I mean, I'm not even sure, if we're looking for policies, it's, in the end, either we are going to evolve beyond the need for such things, or we're going to be exerting control over each other to make sure that something does or doesn't happen, right? Some sort of control. I think it would be nice to get past that. I think I just, those things tend to work out badly. And I think technology will give us ultimately, right, will give us the opportunity to go get around a lot of those limitations. Not all of them. There will be some things that are fundamental because we are within ourselves not fully aligned. So each of us internally has sort of mutually unsatisfiable constraints. So I think technology is not going to fix that. But the more capabilities each of us has to rise to our potential without having to exert will on somebody else, I think that's the way to go for a mature species going forward.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think are the limitations that technology can help us transcend?
Well, there are many. Let's start with the fact that there's a huge pressing biomedical suffering out there. So many people are limited in what they can do because they're in various disease states, right? They're in pain, limitations of the body. So that's enormous. I get phone calls and emails pretty much every day now that are from people in the most unbelievable circumstances, and so that's kind of to start with. And it's not just for humans. I think that relieving that for the animal kingdom in general is huge, right? It's not just about us. It's about a lot of beings with significant sentience that are really having very suboptimal lives. So I think that needs to be addressed first. And then there's the broader issue of limitations. So I think whatever the current standard kind of IQ range is for humans is arbitrary. Nobody really, this is kind of the important thing to realize about evolution, that it doesn't optimize for any of the things that we value. It doesn't optimize for happiness. It doesn't optimize for the right level of intelligence. It doesn't do any of that. It tends to optimize for basically successful reproduction and biomass. That's it. So when people wonder about, well, aren't there going to be real problems if we all, let's say, increase our intelligence or something like that? The level of intelligence we have is not some magical perfect level that somebody picked because it was good for us. That just happens to be where evolution stopped at the time that we became modern humans. There's nothing to say that level is better or worse than some other level. So intuitively, I think that we should have the freedom to increase our understanding of the world, of ourselves. So increase intelligence, increase maybe longevity is a part of it. I'm not sure. But these limitations that we have of body and mind are completely arbitrary. Nobody set this up as like the optimal point for us that we can't go past. It's just totally arbitrary.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's it then, isn't it? We're just trying to explore these questions. And you also mentioned happiness and well-being and trying to do that. Actually, sorry. This is the question. What is intelligence?
There are many definitions. I don't believe that anything has just one possible way of looking at it. But for me, the most useful, the definition of intelligence that I have found most useful is basically a one that was put out by William James, which is some degree of competency of reaching your goal by diverse means. So to think about it another way, think of the spectrum, and this is I wish I could remember who came up with this kind of analogy. I don't remember who said it first, but I think it's very good. It's the spectrum between two magnets trying to get together, right? And Romeo and Juliet trying to get together. What's the difference? The difference, and everything in between, including autonomous vehicles, the various kinds of animals, minimal active matter and things like that. It's a huge spectrum, and the question is, given a set of goal states for the system, how much ingenuity is it going to put forward in getting those goals met in different circumstances when you start putting barriers in its way and things like that? So you can imagine extremely simple systems like magnets where you put a barrier and they're just going to stand there pressed up against the barrier. They're never going to walk around and do things like this, versus systems like humans who have very, very complex repertoires in social spaces and in physical spaces of doing things despite all sorts of perturbation, and then everything in between. So for me, intelligence is purely functional. It is not directly tied to any of the other things we're interested in. So let's say consciousness or anything like that. It is purely functional competency in problem solving. That's what I think is a useful view of intelligence.
And what fascinates me about the question of intelligence is, if we look at nature, if we look at the order of nature, it's quite intelligent. And it also seems to me that humans are part of nature, are nature themselves. And then the question is, can we somehow tap into that intelligence that we observe in the natural world and use it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that step one, which a lot of people still have trouble with, is really coming to grips with the notion of diverse intelligence. Really coming to understand that we're not magical, we're not separate from the world around us, that we as adult humans develop from a single cell. Yeah. And so there's this smooth, continuous process of of increase of cognitive capacity over time. We are both evolutionarily and developmentally, we are directly linked to physics. We were a blob of physics and chemistry at one point. So there's this field of diverse intelligence, which is trying to develop an understanding of how to recognize, how to relate to, and how to create other kinds of unfamiliar intelligences. And this is a critical part of really using the intelligences all around us. Step one is to recognize that it's possible. And there are a lot of people that get very upset about they've got this term called anthropomorphism, which I think is a magic, it's basically magic. You're basically saying that humans have this sort of magic glow, and that you shouldn't be kind of painting this onto anything else. We're kind of different. I think that's a fundamental mistake. I think step one is to understand the wide range of diverse intelligences, and then seeing what we can learn in our interaction with them.
When you say diverse intelligence, like for example, for me, the example of an orange tree comes up. An orange tree produces oranges, not apples, and it's intelligent to produce oranges. A kangaroo does something very well compared to an elephant. A Michael Levin might be great at doing something as opposed to another person. So is that what you mean by diverse intelligence, that each organism, each unique... No. Okay. What do you mean?
Not really. I mean, that's part of it, but I would emphasize two things. One is that intelligence isn't just the idea that something does reliably achieves a particular outcome. That's not enough for intelligence. That you can get from a kind of feed forward emergence. So there are many systems that follow very simple local rules, and when you sort of crank forward in time, something very complex comes out. Yeah, that by itself is not intelligence. Intelligence is, in my view, the key thing about intelligence is the ability to get to the same goal despite perturbations. So the question now is, if we put various barriers in your way in whatever problem space you're working with, how much ingenuity do you have to do other things, to take different paths, to use different tools, to change yourself if need be, to change your environment, to do whatever you have to do to get to achieve the same result? This means that this has an important implication. This means that you can't just see intelligence from the output. Basically, and a lot of people mischaracterize diverse intelligence this way. They say, oh, well, then you can say anything is intelligent. Here's reliably, for example, something like a fractal. We have a very simple formula. You sort of crank through and you reiterate that formula, and you get this amazing, beautiful picture, right? Look at that complexity. There you go. You can call that intelligence. That's a mischaracterization. That's a straw man. Diverse intelligence doesn't say that just having a complex outcome or even a reliable outcome is intelligence. Intelligence is the question of what do you do when the circumstances change? Do you have any ability to be flexible to solve various degrees of problems in another way? So for example, in your example of the kangaroo, just watching a kangaroo egg become a kangaroo isn't necessarily intelligence. That's just feed-forward emergence. But if you were to find out that, hey, wait a minute, I can take this embryonic kangaroo like you can with human embryos and many other kind of embryos, and cut it in half at an early stage, and I don't get two half bodies, I get two normal monozygotic twins, because each one, even though you stuck it in a weird region of anatomical morphospace, can go around and get to the place where it needs to go, meaning regrow the half that's missing, and you still get a kangaroo. Or when you have a salamander, and you've artificially forced the cells to be gigantic, you still get the same size salamander because fewer cells will get together, and in fact will use new molecular mechanisms to build the organs of the correct shape and size, even though the parts are all wrong. So now that's the beginnings of intelligence, the ability to change what you do, to use different tools at your disposal to still get to the exact same goal despite unpredictable, novel circumstances. That's problem solving, which is key to this. So that's intelligence. And what I mean by diverse intelligence is being open to recognizing new types of problem spaces. So all kinds of things, individual bacteria solve problems in physiological space and metabolic space. Slime molds solve problems in morphospace and in chemical space. Humans, of course, solve problems in three-dimensional space, but also in linguistic space. There are lots of different agents, from minimal active matter to different kinds of animals and algae and bacteria and humans and some engineered systems, some AIs and so on. That's diverse intelligence, is being open to testing these things to see how much ingenuity they have under different perturbations. Because a lot of people seem like they think that you can have feelings about this. They'll look at a system and go, that can't be intelligent. That's, whatever, this or that. Well, you can't just have these philosophical preconceptions. You have to do the experiment. Somebody has to make a claim. I think it has this level of intelligence in this problem space of reaching this goal with this level of ingenuity. And then we can do experiments and we can see, are you right or wrong? Does it have that capacity or not? This is meant to be an empirical science. We can't have feelings about these things. We have to do the tests.
And you mentioned earlier on increasing human intelligence. But why do we need to increase human intelligence would be my question. And then, let's begin with that question, perhaps.
Okay. Well, I have a simple way to think about it. Let's say that the evolution had gone slightly differently, and our generic level of intelligence across the globe, the average was what we would currently call like 40 IQ points. That was right. Let's say we come to Earth and all the humans have an IQ of about 40. Would you say that in that case there's a need to increase intelligence?
Well, I wouldn't limit intelligence just to IQ as well.
I understood, but whatever. I don't mean this. I don't mean the current way of measuring it. I'm just a rough idea. The cognitive performance. No art science literature of everybody has an IQ of what we currently associate with roughly the level of 40, or go below. I don't care, 20, whatever. At that point, would you say that there was some benefit of increasing intelligence?
Well, I get what you're saying, but my that was just my fundamental question was, let's just say we do have the highest intelligence that we can. What is the problem?
But there's no, so we're already, I think we've already lost the game here. I don't believe there's any such thing as highest level that we can. We have stopped, evolution has stopped us at a particular level, which we call plus or minus 100, right? That's just what we call it. But it might have stopped earlier and it might have stopped later. This is completely arbitrary, is what I'm saying. So if you think that at a level of 40, it would have been good to go up, I'm saying the current level is not some magical special level. That just happens to be where the dice stopped. And so for the exact same reason that you would raise it at 40 or 20, you would want to raise it now. Of course, some people might say no. Some people might say actually intelligence makes it harder to, they say, look at these animals having a lovely, lovely life. It's better not to worry about the meaning of life and whatever. Okay, fair enough. I think that's I think that's a terrible perspective, but some people do think that way. I think we want to increase our intelligence for the exact same way that if we were at 40, we would want to increase our intelligence.
And what are the fundamental problems that we should use our intelligence to solve? For example, it seems to me that no matter who you are, we all care about this inward sense of happiness, joy, peace, even intelligence, wisdom. I think we all want that. Health, good food. What's the fundamental question that our intelligence can help us solve?
I think that, well, that's a good, I mean, you're basically asking, I think you're basically asking for the meaning of life, because
perhaps that's the question I'm asking.
I think so. Well, I'm certainly not going to claim to have the answer, certainly not for anybody else, but I think that, look, when the intelligence is really low, then in a given system, then it doesn't have the capacity to be concerned about these things, right? So I have this concept of a cognitive light cone. So the cognitive light cone is the size of the biggest goals you can possibly pursue, both in space and time. So for really low consciousness, intelligence level, your cognitive light cone is very small. You're only interested in the things that are happening right now, kind of in a certain radius. If your cognitive light cone is huge, you might be interested in things that are happening planet-wide and that are going to be true 100 years from now, and then everything in between, right? You got this different. So I don't know. I think the higher level of intelligence that you have, the more capacity you might have to actually solve this problem, and to ask what is the what are the things that we should be caring about. I mean, part of intelligence is being able to set your own goals, right? That's a very nice capacity, is not just to be a goal directed system, but actually be a meta goal directed system, to actually be able to set your own goals. And I think having more intelligence might let you do that better, right? And to have a bigger perspective on. I mean, we're so incredibly limited, right? The amount of information that we can process, the amount of care. I mean, I'm really interested in part of and I've worked on a couple of papers with a few Buddhist scholars, and we sort of think about this issue of capacity to care. So the current standard human is able to physically sort of care in the linear range about some number of other beings, right? It's not a super huge number, but you know, if you know something happens to 1,000 people, and you know, you're either very sad or very happy about it, and then you find out that, oh, it's actually 10,000. You're not 10 times sadder or happier, right? We can't scale that way. It's just after a certain point, it's just numbers. You don't really, you know, you're not really linearly caring that much. So one of the things that I think would happen with an increased cognitive light cone is an increased capacity for practical care. So that you would actually be able to be in a functional way engaged in the well-being of many more other beings than we are capable of now. That, I think, is a critical thing to expand. And so when I say expand intelligence, I don't just mean this kind of, like, you know, some sort of ability to calculate or some kind of a technological capacity. I'm not actually talking about that at all. I'm talking about the ability to care more broadly, to expand that cognitive light cone, so that you are able to. I mean, think about this cognitive light cone, right? So you've got a you know, a tick or something, and the cognitive light cone is tiny. It's sort of, all it really cares about is the local concentration of whatever chemical it's attracted to. It has very little memory going backwards, very little anticipatory power going forwards. That cognitive light cone is very small. Look at a dog, right? A dog has more memory going back, a little bit of anticipation, more anticipation going forward. It might care about the people in the immediate family, but there is no way you're going to get that creature to care about what happens to 1,000 individuals 3 towns over 5 months from now. It's impossible. It's never going to happen. And so in order for a being to be able to care about bigger issues, including more of other beings, you have to expand that cognitive light cone. And I'm not sure that can happen without, I don't know any way that could happen without an expansion of intelligence.
Could we use the word compassion or love even for what you just said there?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. But the reason that I use care and concern and things like that is because I think it fundamentally has to be functional. So compassion and love, I agree with you that fundamentally, yes, that's it. It's compassion and love. But a lot of people, when they hear compassion and love, they think it's an emotion, right? So they think it's a feeling that I have and about other stuff. The feeling to me is far less important than what you actually do. So to me, this idea of, this is why my whole framework is sort of built around this goal directedness idea, that goals are not how you feel about stuff. They're what you actually physically work towards. They're what you expend energy, effort, and intelligence to achieve. So yes, it's compassion and love, but it's actually care and concern, in the sense that you should actually be working towards this. If it's a you know, kind of an emotional state that stays locked within you and doesn't actually impact anybody, you know, that's useless. I'm talking about actionable ability to act. I mean, goals are things that you're actively capable of pursuing, not emotional states that you are capable of having, but actual goals that you can work towards.
So it's an actual practical thing that we do, as opposed to just thinking about it and not doing something. We're concerned about actual action, right?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it can be part of it. Think of the I think the word goal captures it pretty well. If you say to me, my goal is I don't know, my goal is to have world peace. My next question is, amazing. What do you, well, so how are you working towards that goal? And if you say, well, I've sort of I feel really nice, like I feel emotionally like it would be a great thing to have. That's it. And they, well, you don't have that as a goal. You might have had that as a thought or whatever, but that's not a goal. You're nothing about your functionality is aimed towards that goal. A goal is something that is a state towards which you are capable of working. And some of these goals, you're never going to explain world peace to a dog, and you're never going to explain the goal of guarding your house to an ant, and things like this. It's all of these. Every creature has this kind of some kind of cognitive light cone that limits what goals are they possibly capable of pursuing.
Now, this raises a question for me. And it seems to me that the highest use of intelligence, I'm purely speaking here about the human mind, because I cannot speak for the beetles, I cannot speak for the insects, I cannot speak for the dog. I can only speak for the human mind, as that seems to be what I have access to. It seems to me that the highest use of intelligence is to be able to, exactly like you said, solve any problem, but personally and also globally. And if I were to look at the largest global problem that we have, it's what you said earlier, it's world peace. And to me, it seems like the reason why there is no world peace is because we've divided ourselves psychologically. For example, it is clear that nationality divides people. That's what war is. Religion divides people. I'm a Christian, you're a Buddhist, and so on. And we have this psychological division between us. Same with politics, same with all these things. And to me, if I were to ask, what is a good use of intelligence? It seems to me that it's necessary to understand the fragments, the limitations, the conditioning, the beliefs that I have within me, as that creates division, and this division creates a psychological barrier between me and you, between I'm a whatever country and you're a whatever country, I'm a X religion and you're a Y religion, and so on. And to me, it seems like this psychological barrier is what is preventing us from cooperating between one another in the first place. And if I were to ask, what is the highest use of intelligence? It seems to be to understand this mind, to understand what is happiness, to understand what is fear, because anything that I do out of fear will create disorder outwardly. Anything that I do out of anger will create a disordered action outwardly. So it seems to me it's fundamental to understand what these emotions are and why am I conditioned? Why do I have certain beliefs? Why do I have certain prejudices? As without understanding that, whatever I do outwardly will be a disorder. Internal disorder indicates an outward disorder. So to me, it seems like I might be wrong about this, but I'm just simply exploring that it's necessary to understand the inward, because without understanding the inward, whatever we do outwardly will be a reflection of that.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I got a question though. Just to kind of help us calibrate our expectations with respect to world peace. So imagine a world in which the Earth was covered in a population that lived in complete peace, at a level of some sort of let's say Bronze Age or before that, let's say something earlier than that. 100,000 years, nothing happened. Like literally nothing happened. No art, no science, no. Exactly the same at the end as they were at the way in, but total world peace. No conflicts. Just like peace. But absolutely nothing happened. Maybe go back earlier. Maybe hunter gatherers or something. Right, 100,000 years. Nothing happens, and nothing's ever going to happen. That's how they're going to be. Does that sound like? Would you say that was? I don't even know I don't have the vocabulary for it even. But is that fine, or would you say there's something missing? If that's just how it was, world peace, but absolutely no product, no advancement of any kind.
That's it. That was exactly my point as well, which I didn't make clear. To me, when there is a sense of peace, when there is a sense of leisure, when there's a sense of happiness, I'm still going to act. I'm still going to pursue knowledge. I'm going to explore technology, science, but I'm going to be doing it in a much more intelligent way. So, in fact, I can be way more intelligent if I am peaceful, if I'm not doing something out of fear, if I'm not doing something out of greed, if I'm not doing something out of a sense to earn a livelihood. I'm going to have the leisure to actually pursue my genuine intellectual curiosity. And I think we know what happens when you do this. You're going to have excellence in whatever you pursue, whether it's pursuing basketball, whether it's pursuing the questions of biology, whether it's coming up with great design for rockets, whatever it is. I feel like we're going to be far more intelligent if we do reach this level of peace, if we do reach this level of happiness, if we do find out what is intelligence and how to truly use it, because then we have the leisure, the time to truly pursue our genuine intellectual curiosity. And when you do it for the love, you're going to excel. You're going to do so much better than if you're doing it out of fear. So to me, it's the most practical thing there is.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds great. And again, I have zero training or expertise in any of these issues, so I probably don't know what I'm talking about. But it seems to me that I don't know of any examples where that's happened. So I know of examples where there have been long periods of peace with zero progress, and many examples of progress that has had a lot of conflict. I don't know what is an example of a long period of significant peace with significant progress. Maybe that exists. I have no idea. So it would be great. That certainly sounds like the way to go. I agree with you. I don't know if that happens. I don't know how to make it happen. I don't know.
Well, to me, the only reason why I said that is because to me, it seems like these are the questions that intelligence should try to solve. These are the questions that we should use our intelligence to pursue. Maybe these are the wrong questions, but it does seem to me that these would be, well, quite beneficial for all of us, not just for some of us.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm. So is that ultimately then what we should, well, not we should. Is that ultimately then what the question of biology is trying to answer?
I think what question things are trying to answer is a very person specific.
That's true.
So, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. For some people, probably, and for many others, no. I mean, I think there are many people working in biology who would say it's got nothing to do with any of that. Right? There are people working in molecular biology. There are people working in, just all kinds of aspects of life that they would say has nothing to do with any of this. So I think that's a very kind of dependent question on who you're talking to.
Right. But like, I think if we look at the definition of biology, I think it's the study of life, right?
Sort of.
Or yeah,
I mean,
what is it actually?
Well, that's a good question. That's great, except then that if you didn't already know what it was and you looked it up in the dictionary and it said it's the study of life, you go, well, that doesn't help. Let me look up what life is, because then you'll try to find out what life is, and either it will, if it's smart, it'll say whatever it is that biologists study, that's life, right? Which puts you into a nice circular kind of definition, but that's actually the most honest one. Or it will try to make some kind of definition, and I frankly have never heard of a good definition of life that's useful for moving your research forward. I think that this is one of the, I mean, there's certainly people who work on this and who have interesting ideas on this. I do not, I don't spend any time trying to define life or think about what life is or isn't. I'm much more interested in the spectrum of cognition than what's living and versus non-living. But I think it's very clear that in the natural universe, there is a class of systems which are very good at scaling cognition, from very basic things that physical systems do up through very complex kind of cognitive capacities, and we call those things life. That's basically what we do. So yeah, I think you could say that biology is the study of mostly naturally evolved cognition amplifying systems, something like that. That might be a definition that I might get behind.
Yeah, because the reason why I said that was I think every knowledge branch has certain questions that they're trying to answer. For example, mathematics has certain questions. There's of course multiple questions, but there's a specific amount of questions that mathematics is trying to answer. Same with physics, same with ecology, same with religion, same with philosophy, and I feel like it's the same with biology or any knowledge branch. So my intention behind that question was to see, okay, so if we're concerned about biology, what are the questions that biology is trying to answer? So to me, that seems like the whole point of studying a knowledge branch is because you're interested in certain questions and you pursue them. And whatever questions you pursue, you can put a label on as a biologist or, religion or whatever it is. So that was the intention behind asking that question. If that makes sense. I might be wrong, but I'm just exploring.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, there are many questions in biology, as far as the origin of living things and the organization of living things, and I think there are as many views of biology as there are biologists. I think everybody has a different kind of perspective on what, and I think physics is the same way. There are certain people that study physics and think that they're studying very profound philosophical questions, and then there's other physicists who think that's ridiculous and they should just be calculating and figuring out better ways of calculating physical events. So there are different lenses on the whole enterprise.
What are the questions that plague you? Like, what are you obsessed with? What are the questions that you're trying to answer? What makes you move every single day? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah. Well, the question, the central question that underlies everything that I do is the question of the scaling of cognition. I want to understand how tiny little minds work together to become bigger emergent minds, and all the ways that happens, all the ways that fails to happen, all the ways that goes wrong, all the ways that we could exploit it for various positive uses, and so on. As far as my own personal motivation, it's kind of two things. Long term, I'm really interested in very foundational questions about what are the right ways to think about cognition, what are the useful lenses with which to recognize and relate to intelligences in our world, and to link some of that to thought in physics and computer science and other things. And then there's the very practical stuff, which is that I think that the right way to work in this field is to couple it tightly with empirical experiments that end up being useful. So these are a lot of the kind of fundamental philosophical things that we work about eventually have implications to how we develop therapeutics for birth defects, for traumatic injury, for cancer, for degenerative disease. And so part of my lab is very kind of basic and fundamental, and part of it is very practical applications to biomedicine that to try to elevate the condition of humans and others right now, as soon as basically as soon as we can.
So essentially, it's theoretical understanding, philosophy, whatever, and also the practical aspect of things.
Yeah, and it's it's a lot to bite off, and it's very hard, and so I don't know in the end how successful we'll be in either direction, but I feel like we found a good mix of things, a good balance point where the things we do on the conceptual side actually change the way we do experiments, which allows us to discover new things that hadn't been seen before, and transition them into things that are on the clinical path. So that's what I'm interested in.
And this raises the question of consciousness then. What is consciousness?
Well, yeah, it's a hard problem. What I'm gonna say first is that I don't do a lot of work on consciousness. I don't consider myself a consciousness researcher. I don't at the moment have a new theory of consciousness. I know a lot of people do. So there's, maybe half a dozen to a dozen different theories of consciousness. I don't have a new one. I don't have that much to add to it that people, much smarter people than I, have already weighed in on this question. So I can say a few things about it, but I don't want to give the impression that that I have a kind of a whole new set of ways to look at this. One thing I feel strongly about is that most of what we do, which is a lot of really useful conceptual advances in various fields and practical applications, can be done without thinking about consciousness at all. I think that's important, because consciousness is a really hard puzzle. I don't think it's a non-issue the way some people think it's a non-problem. No, I think it's actually a very important puzzle. But I think that by figuring out what you can do, I mean, the whole point of, I forget who said this too, but somebody said science is the ability to say something without having to say everything. And I think that's really important. Compartmentalizing to the way that, yes, we can make progress on things without worrying about this very difficult question of consciousness. I think that's really important, is to figure out all the things where we can actually make progress without having to all first solve this. So that's what we do. I very rarely talk about consciousness in any of the things that I write, because I don't think it's required to move the ball forward in these various areas. But I do think that at some point we are going to have to face it. And I think just a couple of things I can say about consciousness. One is that what's unique about it is, and what makes it difficult, is that for every other kind of science, we may not have the answer. We may not have the great, sort of a great final theory, but we know the format in which the theory is going to give us answers. It'll be a number, or it'll be some set of observations, or we know what we're going to get. A good theory of gravitation, a good theory of computation, a good theory of whatever. We know what the output of these things is going to look like. We may not know what the answer is, but we know what it's going to give us. Here's the kind of thing. For a theory of consciousness, it's very hard to imagine what it's going to give you, because let's imagine we had a really good successful theory of consciousness, and I showed you some kind of a system. Maybe it's a natural animal, or maybe it's one that we've engineered in some weird way. And we'd say, okay, so use your theory of consciousness on this creature. What does it output? Because if it's going to output things about brain states, or it's going to physiology, or it's going to output things about behavior, it's not a theory of consciousness. It's a theory of physiology, or it's a theory of behavior. So the question is, what does a good theory of consciousness actually output? Now, one way to think about this is that what it actually outputs are, and this is what I think a good theory of consciousness will do, it should output a protocol, a set of steps to put you in the same mental state, to whatever extent that's possible, as whatever the system you're talking about. So I think C.S. Lewis once said that if you want to describe someone being scared, don't talk about how scared they are. Tell me something that'll scare me, and then I'll know what their state of mind is, right? So the idea is that it doesn't output publicly observable facts. What it outputs is a protocol for putting you in a state where you can experience whatever it is, and then you'll know, that's what the state of consciousness is, to whatever extent that's possible. Now, that has an important corollary, which is that for all other sciences, you can do research, and you can do those sciences in third person, meaning that you do it and you don't get changed by it. So you can do an experiment, and whatever you learn, whatever happens to the experiment, you're still the same going in and coming out. I mean, maybe you've learned something, but you don't have to change as part of the experiment. So all of physics, all of chemistry, all of standard biology is predicated on the fact that you as an observer are separate from the system. I don't think that you can study consciousness that way. I think the consciousness is not a thing. You can study behavior that way. You can study physiology that way. But the only way to really study consciousness is to have is to experience those things from the inside, which means that you are your own experiment, which means that you are not going to be the same coming out as you were going in. This is, in sort of classical, kind of a weird analogy, but in classical, in sort of pre-scientific terms, this is the difference between chemistry and alchemy. The difference is that chemistry is a regular third-person science. You can do your experiments, and you're the same. Alchemy wasn't supposed to be that. Alchemy was supposed to be the transformation of the experimenter. You are changing, and and that puts huge limitations on what you can actually achieve. I think it's very limited what you can actually achieve in the true study of consciousness. So that's kind of one set of thoughts on that. The other set of thoughts is this. And we're doing kind of a paper on this now. If you think about let's say half a dozen of the most popular theories of consciousness, and you look at what they say about why it is that brains are associated with consciousness, so they all have some kind of, so one theory might be about the microtubules and the kind of quantum processes in these microtubules, and another one might be about the magnetic field of the brain, and another one might be about the way that the neurons process information in a particular way. For the vast majority of those theories, they actually don't pick out the brain as unique. I mean, every cell in your body does most of the things your neurons do, and especially with our study of bioelectricity and those the related questions, we now see that most of what your brain does goes on in every part of the body. So that suggests that for most of those theories, for the exact same reason you are committed to thinking that the brain is associated with consciousness, you should be committed to other organs in your body being associated with consciousness. And there is no particular way that I've seen so far where one of these theories explains why it has to be the brain. It can't be any of these other organs. It has to be the brain. Typically, they sort of assume it's the brain. They talk about neurons, and then you ask them, well, what's a neuron? Well, it's an electrically active cell. Well, guess what? Every cell in your body does some of that. So the typical kind of the typical resistance to that, people will say, well, that's crazy. I'm the only one in this body. I don't feel my liver is conscious. Well, right, you don't feel that I'm conscious either. You only feel that you're conscious. If your liver is conscious, you don't have access to that any more than you have access to mine. And of course, we don't think it's linguistically competent. We don't think it's verbal, but neither is your right hemisphere usually. And so there's really no way for you to know what other consciousnesses are in your body. And I'm not saying they're there because the evidence to obtaining evidence for consciousness is extremely hard, if not impossible. But there's no way to rule it out for the same reasons you think. If you think brains are conscious, you should be taking very seriously the idea that you may have other body components there are as well. So that's those are about the extent of useful things I can say about consciousness.
Michael, I know we're running short on time, but do you have room for one more question?
If we can do it in 3 minutes, I do. Yeah.
That's going to depend on you, I guess. What do we absolutely know for certain when it comes to science?
For certain? The one thing we know for certain is that we don't know anything for certain. Yeah. I don't think we know anything for certain. I think Descartes, he gets a lot of flack at the right nowadays, but I think he was on the right track in that I do think that we can make certain personal conclusions about our own existence. That's it. Everything else is up for grabs. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Michael, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Interesting conversation. Thank you.
Where should people go to find you, to learn more about you? I know you've done podcasts before. I'll link all these, of course, but yeah, where's the best place for people to go?
Yeah, there's nothing to learn about me, but learning about the work is good, which is you can go to www.drmichaellevin.org. So that's the website that has all the papers, the data, the software, the videos, the inspiration, resources, everything is there. So you can learn about the work there.
Wonderful. Well, look, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you so much.
I really do appreciate it.
Good conversation. Cool. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.